As an online educator, the types of products that you choose to make have a dramatic impact on the number of people that you reach and the number of people that end up buying from you. If you choose the right products, you can get people coming in droves and falling over themselves to learn from you. If you choose the wrong types of products, though, you will put people off because they will not want to learn from you in that way. And in this video, I'm going to show you a very, very important distinction between what works and what doesn't. And it's a trap I see a lot of people falling into. In case you don't know me, my name is Olly Richards. I'm the founder of StoryLearning.com. It's a multi-million-dollar online education business. I'm also a mentor and advisor to other online education entrepreneurs. Now, I made this mistake when I first started my business, Story Learning. In fact, the very first course I ever made was basically how to learn a language. The product was called, well, this was like 2014 or something. The product was called Language Learning Foundations, and it was a great course. It was all about how to learn a language, of the skills and techniques that I developed myself over the years that helped me learn over 8 languages. And it was guiding people through this process of understanding how the mind works, how the brain works, how to study in an effective way, all of that stuff. Great course, and I made some sales, but I also remember quite a lot of confusion creeping in. There was a point where we were running ads, and I would go out with my ads and say, here's a course on how to learn a language, and people would jump on it, they would buy it. And then I get emails saying, but Olly, I'm trying to learn Spanish. Where are the words? Where's the grammar? And I had to reply and say, no, it's not a Spanish course. I'm showing you how to learn a language, the methods that you can use to learn a language. And as soon as I got outside my core audience of followers, people just didn't get it. What they were used to, and this is what I eventually realized, what they were used to and what they expected was the Spanish course, the French course, the Japanese course. What they were thinking in their mind was, teach me French. And so eventually I listened and I pivoted, and I started to create French courses. So I created the course on Learn French. And that was cool because then I could make Learn French level 1 and then level 2. And then ultimately went all the way to Learn French level 6. And then we were able to expand into all other kind of things like, okay, now you can learn French grammar, and we're going to make French books for you. And we can create courses on vocabulary. As soon as we got specific on teaching the actual language, teaching the thing, giving the end result, rather than a kind of how-to offering, that's when we were able to access the wider marketplace because it's something that was commonly understood. We were meeting people where they are at. It's very similar to a concept I've talked about in the past, which is peaks along the mountain. I'll link a video I've recorded up here somewhere on this, but the idea here is if this is your starting point and this is the final destination, many people make the mistake of trying to equip people to reach the final destination. But what people often want in the wider marketplace is baby steps. 1, 2, 3 short steps towards the overall goal that give specific, tangible outcomes. Now, what this comes down to ultimately is an understanding of a very important concept, which is the idea of meta versus practical. So what does this mean? My course on how to learn a language was meta. It's the systems and thought processes, the behaviors that we would need to learn in order to learn a language properly. What I ended up moving towards was the practical course. This is the Learn French course. Here are the words, here's the grammar, here's everything you need in order to learn. It's essentially what you would expect if you walked into a bookshop and bought a book on learning French. It's what most people expect. Now, where we get into trouble as educators is we are often too smart for our own good. We're often in this because we've spent 5, 10, 20 years getting very, very good at something. We're probably top 1% in the world at the thing that we are doing. And so we are very, very aware of the pitfalls of doing things the regular way. In the case of language learning, if you just go to a bookshop and buy a textbook, well, the textbook is great, but we know that it's not just, you can't just learn a language from a textbook. There's so many other things you've got to do. You've got to develop techniques for learning and memorizing words. You've got to understand how to interact with native speakers. You have to learn skill training like reading in order to learn more vocabulary. There's so much that we know is not right with a simple textbook that we feel that we have to give the truth. We have to show people the true way of learning, because otherwise we're going to be selling ourselves short. And this is why when I first released my How to Learn a Language course, this is exactly what I was doing. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to show people the true way to learn a language. And that's why it was good. That's why it worked. But most people are not like that. Most people don't want to learn the systems behind things. They just want the guided step-by-step practical approach. And so what I see so many entrepreneurs doing is they go to the meta because they are so aware of all the problems that they want to create the true version, the true guide to the course. They think, my students need to know the fundamentals. And it's true. And they do. But the big problem is most people are not what we call systems thinkers. Now, a systems thinker is someone who thinks, I want to know the truth behind how this all works. I want to understand the systems and the behaviors and the patterns, all the metacognitive things that go into building a skill or getting a result. I don't know what percentage of the population this is. I suspect it's like 5-10% at most. And most people, 90%, are not this, which means if what we are selling is the meta, the how-to, then this 90% of people who are not systems thinkers are not going to want this because they're going to be looking for the practical thing instead. They're going to be looking for the 10-step course or whatever. So now we have a dilemma. What do we do as educators? We want to teach them the true path. We want to teach them what really matters to get them results, but people end up wanting this. Well, the conclusion that I've come to after many years of doing this is that if you want to have an impact in the world and help people, you've got to reach them in the first place. And so you get to a point where you inevitably have to sell people what they want and then give them what they need, which means effectively selling the practical course, which promises the very tangible outcome, but then smuggling in the metacognitive skills that they need to actually improve. So in my case, this was what this looked like in the language space, was to sell them the French course, but then inside the French course, teach them the meta skills that they would need to be successful. By the way, if you're finding this useful so far, you might like my case study. It's completely free. It's 118 pages. It describes in great detail how my business Story Learning works. I'll put a link in the description for you to grab it. So I've already showed you how I adapted my approach with language learning to fit this meta systems thinker problem. But let's look at how this might look in some other niches. Let's say that you're teaching interior design. And interior design is kind of similar to language in that there's all these kind of concepts you have to understand around lighting, around colors, etc. And so it's common for someone who's studied this themselves to want to teach the underlying systems, the underlying thinking. But actually what most people are going to be thinking is, hey, I just want to design my living room. I'm sick of my living room being full of clutter. Can you give me a course to design my living room, please? At which point it probably makes sense for you to say, yes, I'm going to show you how to design your living room. Here is my 6-week living room transformation course, during which I will also show you and teach you some of these designs so that you can do this yourself. Let's imagine that you're teaching productivity, and the thing that you want to help people with is to be more productive, because you know just how much their life will transform if they can only learn to be more productive. But this is very systems thinking. So instead, can you offer a transformation that's something like reclaim 5 hours a week? It's tangible. It's a small step. It leaves space open for many more things besides. And in order to reclaim 5 hours a week, guess what? You've got to actually teach the core skills that go into being productive in the first place. But you're going to end up reaching far more people if you have a specific claim like that. Similarly, memory improvement, super important skill. Improving your memory involves a lot of very difficult and a lot of very involved mental work. Can sound difficult for people. It's the meta skill. But if instead you can say, well, I will teach you to memorize everything in your law book so that you can pass the bar exam, well, now we've got something specific. And of course, in order to memorize all this stuff to pass the bar exam, guess what? You have to teach them the foundational memory improvement techniques in the first place. But by positioning it in this way with a very specific outcome, this is how you're going to end up reaching people who are looking for a specific result. Most of business is solving a very specific problem for a very specific person. And so the more that you can articulate that and the more that you can meet people where they are, the better. But really the bigger picture here is not just moving from the meta to the tangible, offering very specific outcomes and solutions, but to design your business model in such a way that once people have got one result with you, they can continue learning with you for years and years to come. And in this video, I show you exactly what that looks like with my peaks along the mountain model, which is very popular, people really like, and you should watch that right now.